Hi, my name is Patrick Desjardins. In this video, you will learn how to declare a variable with TypeScript and the keyword let. A fundamental concept in programming is declaring a variable. There are many ways to declare a variable in TypeScript that are the same as in JavaScript. In this episode, we will understand why let replaced the archaic var keyword to declare a variable. The second angle around let will be about the declaration scope, and finally solidify the reason to declare a variable with let. The keyword let comes to the rescue of some quirks of the original var that is older in JavaScript. If you do not know about var, one of the next videos will introduce to it. Nonetheless, what is important is to remember to use let for variables that you want to set a value more than once. Let sets the lifespan of the variable at the scope where the declaration takes place. We will see the var keyword in an optional episode later. It is not used as much for a few years because let and const took over. So what scope means? A scope defines the inception of the area where the keyword let is written until the area stops. The scope represents the life of a variable. The block of code that acts as a boundary is delimited by the curly braces. To clarify, often if not always, the scope is always visually highlighted with a different indentation. While TypeScript or JavaScript do not take into account the spacing, it is a clear way to understand scope as the code grows. For example, if you declare a variable with let within an if statement, the variable is accessible to read and write until the execution leaves the boundary of the if. This rule is valid for a function, a loop, and a class. As long as you have a curly bracket, you create a scope. For example, you can declare a variable and then without any if statement or loop, you can create a scope that will follow the rules discussed. In the following code, it prints 1, 2, 1, 2 because even if inside a scope the last assignation was set to 2, at the global scope it was 2. Hence, the last console log print the value 2. There are two significant details to note on let behavior compared to var. One, though the output is expected to be the one defining the scope, the value 999 is limited to the range of the condition, and the value 111 is available only in the scope of the function. Second, since both x are two separated variables, because they are declared twice, both x can be a different type. At the moment, we're not explicitly mentioning the type, but will soon be even more critical. TypeScript determines in this code that the former x is a string, while the later is a number. Because of the capacity to infer types from a code like the one above, TypeScript flags the code as not fit to transpile. The code does not compile in this example because of the var variable. The error is error TS2403, that is, a subsequent variable declaration must have the same type. The variable myStringValue must be of type string, but it is a number at the second time. The error does not raise for the let variable because TypeScript respects the scope's limit in its code analysis. As you can see, var brings confusion that TypeScript can handle by providing guidance. As a rule of thumb, var is never used since the introduction of let and const, which are two alternatives. In the code presented, the var declaration was defined the same value. They were hoisted outside the if statement, causing an issue with a variable that was initially declared as a string and then later as a number. However, the similar declaration with let in the two different scopes didn't hoist the variable and is considered two distinct variables. Hence, it compiles. The scope with let allows one to redefine a variable in an inner scope, but can also consume a variable from the outer scope. It is essential to understand that it is possible to consume variables from parent scope and not the other way around. In the code, we can see that we have many imbricate if statements. The two if inside the function cause 4 levels of scope: the global one, the function one, and the two ifs. There is a function at each scope declaring let. The global scope can only access its own variable. The variable inside the function can access all the global variable and also its variable as long as they are not in scope like the if. Similarly, the function, the first if can access the global variable, the function variable, and its own if, but not the child if. Finally, the fourth scope can access every variable. In the example, each variable had a different name. What happens if at each scope the variable has the same name? It would create shadow variables, and TypeScript will warn you. The example covers the case that it is possible from a function to reach the global variable x and y, but not the first x. TypeScript know that in the scope of the function, the variable x exists and that the scope is trying to reach it before it is declared. The story is different from the variable y because it does not exist in the function scope, only globally, hence compile. In this video, we introduce the concept of declaring a variable of let, which is the way to declare a variable in JavaScript as well. So here we are again. We are at a fork where you need to make a decision. One path leads to discover why var is not used anymore. The other path brings you to the declaration with const and why it is one of the most used way to declare a variable. Regardless of your choice, it was the right one because it was your choice. See you soon.